Yes, my name is Kuldeep Singh Rindhawa. I'm making a number of videos which will be embedded onto the website www.realrindhawa.com. This video talks about a section of that website called Justice Initiatives. I am in the process of creating a number of notices and some concepts of justice, and then creating apps which will be made available to a number of organizations who are in the process of creating justice reform and new legislation, as well as the freedom groups, as well as the politicians. I've actually been reaching out to numerous justices of the Supreme Court over the past 5 years, and I've got to a point where I realized that we have a legal system that is not functioning according to law. And so I will be talking about some of those notices, but before that, it's important as part of education that I present in 3 to 4 minutes this thing called sanctity of the court. That is an important part of the legal system. It is basically where a justice of the Supreme Court, who we often consider to be honorable, to do the right thing. If a judge is biased, one does not have to tell that judge, remove yourself. Because being honorable, you're supposed to be having taken the oath, you're supposed to remove yourself without having to be told. Where a judge is relying on a determination that's been fraudulently posted on the website, in which my reputation has been defamed, and then to be treated harshly by the courts, by the same judges who are actually aware of the crimes and protecting those institutional crimes that are taking place against Canadians, then I have serious issues. Or you're relying upon the order of Justice Verhoeven, who has now committed numerous crimes and will be filing a criminal charge against that judge. You have a process of law where a trier of fact has to consider the facts. Considering that I have an engineering background, and we are often considered as being experts, why is it that those judges cannot accept simple facts? Because if you can't accept a simple fact, then basically you are incompetent, and then you should remove yourself for those reasons. But I think you know exactly what's going on, guys. It's not a case that you are unaware. I have now been going into the legal system for 15 years, where I've actually had good debates with judges and masters. And it's pretty clear to me that the morality that is needed for a judge is far removed from justices who have now started to commit crimes and openly commit it. We have the Chief Justice Christopher Hinkson, for example, who has been repeatedly told by me that you're appointing corrupt judges in my hearings. You're relying on this order where you're saying that a professional engineer with 2 degrees and 20 decades of experience back in April of 2005 doesn't know engineering? He doesn't know how to design a water tank? Like, are you guys totally there? And then we got court reporters where I've actually physically witnessed this, who are nodding their heads when I'm trying to get across to a judge and presenting facts. And you're nodding your heads. When in one of the last hearings that I had before Justice Verhoeven, which was an online proceeding, my testimony was blocked. And so you've got a situation where a court reporter has muted my voice, having taken my name, registered my name for the proceeding, and when the hearing was about to begin, you blocked it. And then I recall going into the Newton RCMP office and saying, my voice was blocked. I'm going to the New Westminster Supreme Court to send them instructions and coordinate this with the sheriffs that my voice was blocked. I want that matter investigated. And then I turned up to the New Westminster Court and talked to the sheriffs and told you about this act of where my voice was blocked. What investigations did you do? And yet you're coming and searching me as if I'm some kind of criminal. What you really need to do, guys, is investigate those matters. You have the jurisdiction in the court itself. And if you can't investigate these matters, then refer it to the RCMP, like I have in the past who have not acted. And this is how the crimes are taking place. We have all these institutions that are not functioning according to law. Why? I wonder. So, when the system has failed to a point, I've decided to create a number of legal notices, which I'm in the process of creating. And I need to talk about one of those notices. It's called Notice to Cease and Desist. What that basically means is you're telling someone to stop some illegal activity, you cease, and then you not continue that illegal activity. You desist. So that notice basically says, stop the crime, don't commit any more crimes, guys. And you're continuing with those crimes. And lawyers who have despite received those notices from me repeatedly have continued with the knowledge that the judges are going to protect you. And the institutions like the Law Society of BC is not going to investigate you. So now you've got a situation where lawyers who are corrupt to the core, who are appointed in positions of the association, APEC BC, lawyers who are doing crimes and concealing fraud and presenting false evidence, and you're trying to do an investigation of an engineer for ethics? Do you not see something wrong with this process? How can someone who's unethical be involved in an ethics proceeding? It just can't happen. So it's time that I create certain notices so that we can bring this country back on track. Because it's pretty clear the institutions are not going to do it. We seem to be paying taxes for what? For people to be ignored and subjected to crimes. So the first notice, if you look on the website, is called Notice to Cease and Retract. This is where evidence which is false or incomplete, often provided by a lawyer who's telling a legal assistant in the office of the law firm to prepare an affidavit so that the client or so-called client can sign some documents and file the affidavit. The person who's doing the crime is the lawyer, and that lawyer cannot supervise the legal assistants. And so the legal assistants are now at risk, because now that lawyer who's doing the fraud has implicated you in that fraud. And I know there's an association of legal assistants, but they are not in the process of doing regulation. So when a corrupt lawyer is supervising a legal assistant in a law firm, then it's the Law Society of BC that has to be involved. The very organization that has not investigated about 25 to 30 lawyers, all related to my cases, in which I am physically defending vexatious claims. And then they're abusing the Rule 18 to say that I'm vexatious. And that's how the system has failed, miserably. And so this notice can be prepared with the assistance of a lawyer. So I'm appealing to some lawyers who have not actually gone to yet to come forward and help me prepare this notice so that we can withdraw evidence which is fraudulent, that was relied upon the judge. It doesn't matter if the judge is biased, corrupt, or totally honest, because they've considered evidence which is false, that should not have been presented by the lawyer, because the lawyer was served a notice in my cases. Most people will not do that, but I have, to protect my wife or protect my family. And so that evidence was relied upon in a court of law, which means that any orders that resulted based on that fraudulent evidence before the judge can be withdrawn and retracted, and so that matter and the orders that resulted can be set aside by a lawyer who's following the law. And then when abuse occurs in court, you now have an order which basically is false because it was based on false evidence. So you have this thing called the Evidence Act, and that evidence can be retracted from the previous notice that I just talked about, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the order that was issued is correct. So you have another thing called the notice to correct. And so that can also be prepared by a lawyer with the assistance, because these notices that I'm creating are actually copyright. They're not prepared yet. And once they're ready and fully prepared, I will then issue it to all the freedom groups and all the organizations out there that can rely upon it, where a person doesn't necessarily have to go before a corrupt judge, because we know that corrupt judge is never going to give you justice, especially when you have this practice of ensuring that a victim always ends up before a corrupt judge because it's been pre-arranged. And sheriffs are searching you and instructions are sent upstairs that Mr. Ndawa or Mr. X has turned up in court, we are going to deny justice to him. So instructions are sent, and for me to get to that documentation or those phone calls or whatever process is taking place, it needs to be investigated. And I don't know if there's a body out there that will do that. I know that judges can be complained to the Judicial Council, which I have done numerous occasions, and they have not removed any of those judges. Neither are those orders which are issued being removed, despite that those orders issued by those judges who are known to be corrupt, those orders should be also retracted immediately by that judge. So, if those judges are honorable, perhaps I need to talk about another notice where I can remind those judges, be honorable and correct your injustices that you've caused. That notice is not on the website itself, but I'm just saying there's many notices being created, and notice to correct is one of them, where you don't physically have to appear before that corrupt judge, because that corrupt judge will never give you justice. So it can be done by the Vancouver Registry, where an investigation can be done. So for example, if my funds of $241,000 just went missing, I can do a notice to correct and say, where are my funds gone? I want to know which people were involved, who issued the order, which lawyers were involved, and all that has to be released to me. Once it's released to me, I can then come before a judge who is not compromised, not corrupt, and not basically involved in crimes. So justice can then be delivered in that fashion. If you go to the website, there's another section called ipso facto. Ipso facto is basically a simple statement that homes in onto the truth. And one can create this statement like, APEC BC investigated me in April 2005 for a water tank that didn't have any pipes. So ipso facto, there potentially was no water tank even constructed. And that is the ipso facto statement. And then when that is actually created, you can then say, well, all this time has gone by and these institutions who are supposed to investigate those corrupt lawyers have not. So I can then create, with the assistance of a lawyer who's willing to come forward, a notice of institutional crime. So it's a notice issued to the Law Society of BC that you have not investigated A, B, C, D, E lawyers who have done crimes and need to be removed and pay damages, and we have the insurance fund of lawyers for that. And since now the damages are so considerable, I would be basically making a claim against those corrupt lawyers and claiming from their personal property beyond the level of funds that I'm entitled to receive from the insurance fund. So if the damages are not enough, I will be going after you guys. You have targeted me, so I'm going to be now going after you. Every Sikh that has been harmed has a right to go into court and claim damages from lawyers. In fact, this is why Brett Lowen entered into those proceedings, the Gateway proceedings, when he went before Justice Bernier. That is when that proceeding went sideways, because at that time you knew that I was holding accountable the lawyers who were misleading my wife and have misleaded my former brother who was in the UK, who clearly has limited time now to do the right thing. The only person in my family that I want to give credit to and I want to give an opportunity to is my wife. I want to make it very clear that Madam Justice Choi has an opportunity to do the right thing, because I wrote letters to Registrar Nielsen in the so-called family proceedings, which by the way are not family proceedings, they are proceedings of crime. This is where a judge and a lawyer have done fraud against the parties on the Styler cause. So this is a way of protecting the institutional crimes, where accountants who clearly know that I was in the correct and right have filed fraudulent reports or incomplete reports because some lawyer told them it's okay to do that. You won't be investigated. We run this country. We're in charge. You're not in charge. The people of this nation are in charge. The politicians are servants of the public. It's a government for the people, not a government for yourselves, guys. So, once the notice of institutional crimes is prepared with the assistance of a lawyer, and if those lawyers do not come forward to assist me to prepare these notices, I'll prepare it by myself. I have the expertise, I have the knowledge, I have the brains, I have the intellect, and I'll create it. But if you want to do the right thing, particularly those lawyers who were supposed to act in my best interest, who clearly know what is taking place here in BC, you have a limited time to reach out to me. I am trying to get some organization to do some advocacy work for me. Perhaps they can assist. I won't mention their name, who they are. But we have a policy here of lawyers being appointed to those organizations who are not giving them legal advice. What they're doing is giving them unlawful acts to do, so they're entrapping those organizations that are actually functioning properly in a crime. And so be cautious, guys. The change is taking place, and it will take place rapidly in the next 2 years.